Thank you for joining, everybody. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes so that everybody can get into the session, and then Daryl Brown will kick it right off. If you have any questions today, feel free to enter them into the question section on your screen, and we'll get to those toward the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Hello, everyone on the call. My name is Daryl Brown, and I thank everyone for coming on board today. Welcome to the webinar. Today's subject matter is on-premises versus cloud. Today, during this webinar, Paul Hosey and I will be presenting a few things that are here on the screen. I'll first take us into the print landscape piece of on-premises versus cloud, and then we'll get into the understanding of on-premises versus cloud and more. And then I will flip it over to Paul Hosey for positioning, key features and advantages, and a little bit of background and information on our professional services summary approach. So if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to kick it off right now and speak a little bit about the print landscape as it pertains to on-premise versus cloud. So if anybody was on the last webinar, we spoke of this a little bit, but if you didn't, you're not going to miss this, because this speaks to cloud growth right now. And cloud sits in about 4% of companies that were studied in this study there at the bottom. But by 2026, in just 2 short years, we're going to multiply that by 4. So the cloud's getting pumped up. And so about 18% would be the number here. And then the thing is cloud really for everybody? Well, there's a lot of discussion about that, and that's why we're having this webinar. And let's dig a little bit deeper here. The cost piece of it, I thought I'd lead with that to see kind of where things lie. So if you're talking about on-premise, software licenses only account for 9% of the average costs of an on-premises print management solution and on-premises software solutions. And you get into the customization and implementation, and then you start adding cost, right? And it's that bottom part of the iceberg where you have that. You have a lot of hardware like print servers and network infrastructure and all the things you're building. And then there's this heavy burden on IT personnel, which have to be skilled, trained, and have the ability to pull this whole thing off. So, and keep it going and keep it maintained. So there's definitely a maintenance cost, and then people have to be trained to be able to utilize this on-premise solution. But then if you're over on a cloud-based solution, it seems a little more simplified, right? You've got 68% of your cost, over 2/3 is in that subscription fee, and then you leave the rest below that with the implementation, your customizations and training, and with assistance from your service provider. So it's a little bit different picture, right, from a cost standpoint. And then you move into kind of the compare and contrast of the hallmarks of, say, we'll keep with cloud right now. If we're talking about cloud, the scalability is there for you to expand, maybe contract if you need to, build it how you want. And then to connect everything, you really just need that internet connection, right? You need the devices that connect to the internet from anywhere. And you can put a cloud-based print management solution out there. And the costs are typically lower up front. It's subscription based, so you just pay along the way. And the maintenance is, the onus is more on the service provider, right? And so the IT workload is reduced greatly. So you've got a little bit different situation there, but then you may have some different needs. So if you need a lot of control, look down here at the bottom where we have on-premise print management. So now you've got full control. It's kind of like the paddle shifters on your steering wheel, and you can shift exactly when you need, how much you need, in whatever driving mode that you want to drive your print management solution and data. So the control is there. The security is there because you're baking your own bread, so you control all the ingredients and how it works, especially where it pertains to sensitive information, confidentiality, compliance pieces, all that good stuff. And you can customize it, build it how you like for your specific needs. But you do have the higher upfront cost, you have the ongoing maintenance. So there's a little bit, and some people are doing both. Some people are kind of combining these two things. When we're going to get there real soon. So keep in mind these things in this matrix. Scalability, high on cloud, but on premises, hardware and resource dependent. Accessibility is high in cloud, but on premises limited to how you got that network constructed, which we'll look at a little bit here in a minute. And cost is lower up front on cloud, higher up front on on-premise. We spoke of that. Maintenance, provider managed in cloud, but self-managed, do it yourself on premise. So you've got to have the resources and people to do that. And then from a security standpoint, you have to match up your security needs. So it depends on the provider is really what happens in cloud, and on premise can be very high. You really could control the flow there. So the solution is going to be based on your business side, your needs, your resources, all that stuff that's embedded. And when you take a look at, like, say, the hybrid cloud, where you're using a little bit of both. So here's a typical company with user facilities, right? Very simplified diagram, I know. But the data flows through the user facilities, and when it needs to go out, because you're controlling everything that's in the user facilities, but you have this gateway, the tunnel of the corporate VPN that talks to the data interconnection that then speaks out to the cloud, and it speaks to and from in a bidirectional manner. So many companies, including the one I work for at Toshiba, we have situations similar to this. I'm sure the diagram's a lot more complicated, but it kind of gives you an idea how things flow through a hybrid cloud environment. And it does, sometimes in a lot of companies, it'll actually be some animation here where I should be able to, I guess there's a key components is what this is of the data fabric. So data fabric is an approach that is utilized by many companies to kind of intertwine all these different pieces of the puzzle, from your hosting environment to your data sources, your analytics, all these very technical terms that are on the screen. And that's an approach that happens a lot, especially in this hybrid cloud. Just so you have an idea, if anybody speaks of data fabric, or if you're interested in digging deep on how this applies, this would be an important piece. Let me go here. There we go. And then print security vulnerabilities. So as I said, security is a big piece of the puzzle, right? So what you have is a third of the companies in the past 12 months, according to the study, had a print-related data security breach. So that's a lot. But then you conversely only have 62% of the companies that think that's an important or very important piece relative to their overall IT security strategy. So it's kind of like, there's a little bit of disconnect, but you have to have the right shoe that fits for security. And the consequences when you do have a security breach, so check out these numbers. So the average cost of a security breach could be pretty harmful and fatal. And from a monetary standpoint, $658,000 is a lot on average. And then you get folks only investing 2% of their overall budget for print security. So not the whole IT budget, but the print budget. And then 2/3 of the businesses have identified print security spending as a high priority over the next 2 years. So that's good. But you've got to have the tools to really leverage that 2% of the budget that's being allocated and do it right the first time. So that's why it's good to have education and people to support you. So you'll take a look at this. Let's see if I can get my animations to work. So these gears turn when you have an impact from, you have that earthquake of a print security breach. So you might experience over half the time a productivity loss. You know, stop the presses, you know, something happens where you can't do your normal business operation. You might get negative publicity, especially if you're a famous company. Maybe it's your small local famous company, you need or large, anywhere in between. Negative publicity is not a good thing. Business continuity. So you people trying to do their tasks in the way they normally do and have the processes work the way they're designed can sometimes really have a disruption there. And then if you lose intellectual property, that can be tough to recover and it might be irrecoverable. And that happens like 1/3 of the time. And then you're going to about 1/4 of the time lose data of some sort, some way by this. So there's a lot of impacts, and these are some of the categories that take place. So we need to kind of sort this all out and have guidance. And so next up, you know, to kind of figure out what you need, and then when you might need it, and how to migrate in and out of cloud and that whole picture and position that would be Mr. Paul Hosey. And Paul, you want to come on?
That's great. Thank you, Daryl. So some really some key metrics there that are pretty interesting there. So we're going to talk about some of the positioning and some of the differences that as it relates to on-premise versus cloud, and try to help you give some information to make a good decision about where to go forward. Now, when we take a look at some of the challenges in a traditional print environment, there's quite a few different components that we need to contend with. So traditionally, you know, we would have a set of users and they're working with different operating systems, printing all on the same network. That landscape has changed quite a bit. If we look at today's infrastructure, we may have some home users that are now requiring to access the print devices that are on the network back at the home office. So to get one of those home users working and operable, that may generate a help desk ticket. We also may have some bring your own device workers that when they want to still work in that workplace but using their own devices, that again may generate some help desk tickets as well. And then we also have another aspect that maybe we have some outside contractors that need to have that capability of printing in your environment. You know, that brings in a new set of concerns of from a security perspective, and that may elevate that requirement to have an on-site visit, so incurring some other costs there and some other labor. Now, all of these different touch points, all are going to require some type of updating somewhere along the line, and whether that's operating system or driver updates that are required, there's going to be some touch that's going to be required on all of those different components. Now, we can also start to consider things like toner alerts and down devices, maybe a paper jam or out of toner or supply monitoring, and having visibility to those is another challenge that some organizations are going to face. And also in that traditional print infrastructure, say we need to make an update to the server infrastructure that's in that environment by modifying and updating that infrastructure, that may in itself cause a down print environment at that point in time too. And then we also have to consider some of the different things like viruses, malware, ransomware, all those different components that we have to take into consideration. And every one of these different components is going to cost dollars or some type of cost, whether it's a time cost or a financial cost, but there will be some different impact on each one of those different aspects. Now, if we look at cloud versus on-premise, there are some different comparisons that we can draw here. So on the cloud side, and I'm focused to the left-hand side of the screen that you're seeing. So traditionally, a cloud model is going to be based on a subscription model, where you typically can reduce some of the IT that's required for to onboard and get an environment up and running and maintain that environment. There also comes that built-in security and compliance when we're working with cloud-based products. It takes away some of the requirements for patching and some of those different maintenance tasks. Now, if we compare that to the on-premise side of the house, the license structure typically is a little bit different, where it's usually licensed maybe per device or per user, along with an ongoing maintenance fee to make sure your system's staying top-notch and running the way that it should. Now, there are some advantages to this on-premise model, especially when we look at a mature IT organization that maybe really wants more control over the environment, as opposed to a cloud model where a lot of that is automated. So if we look at that mature IT organization and having the control over when they're pushing patches, when they're pushing updates, and they might want that on their particular schedule. Another component to keep in mind is that if there's been a significant investment in that on-premise hardware, folks typically want to utilize that investment that's already been made. From a security perspective, the ability to make sure that we have total control over the network, everything is within that network scope. That could be another advantage to this capability as well. Now, another component that becomes kind of front and center, especially when we're looking at these cloud versus on-prem conversations, is really how are your users being managed? Because that's actually a key differentiator as to what application really fits best for your environment. So on the cloud side, we do see things like Microsoft Entra ID or Google Workspace, which these are cloud native directory structures. On the on-premise side, we still have that historical Microsoft Active Directory or maybe Unix directory services. There are some others, but those are probably the most prevalent in the industry. Now, especially when we're looking at something like an on-premise Microsoft Active Directory system, there may be, again, a significant investment in time and money that's gone into developing that infrastructure, and that may be something that your users may really want to utilize and leverage that investment that's already in place. So specifically with Active Directory, in that on-premise integration, that is an on-premise utility. So we, in some cases, need that on-premise application to really work with and interact with that Active Directory structure. So some other advantages that really come into play when we have an on-premise system, it's providing that localized access to resources. So when we're using things like local file shares and local printers or USB-based printers or something along those lines, there are some advantages to having that on-premise implementation. All data is going to stay within the confines of your network, and your security teams are the ones that really have control over how that data flows. And again, I mentioned, in a mature IT network or a mature IT space, IT is going to want to be at the helm, and they're going to want to have full control over these different applications and these solutions. And having an on-premise application, it does put IT at that helm of control of how different applications are working within the environment. So let's look at some of the key features and advantages to that on-premise system. Some of the things that we see commonly that are really important in those on-premise output management systems: secure print release, job accounting, mobility. These are very common components. that really can be addressed both from an on-premise and a cloud-based output management system as well. But if we take a look at the rules-based printing, copy center job ticketing, and payment integration, these particular features really can help determine, well, I may need an on-premise solution in my case. Okay, so there are certain features that we can implement, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail. So if we take a look at first rules-based printing, this is a capability of some on-premise systems that could be helpful in many different situations. So from a scripting perspective of interacting with jobs at a programmatic level. So when we talk about things like scripting and routing, that gives us the ability to programmatically route print jobs based on some type of parameter. So in this example, if a print job is larger than 10 pages, and someone's trying to print that at their local workstation, then maybe we're going to automatically route that job to a Find Me queue where it may be more cost effective to print at another device. In some cases, we need to exchange information with the end user that's sending that print job. So maybe we want to prompt that user for some additional information, something related to classification of a document that's being printed, or maybe we need to account a particular document to another use case or a client matter. And then also there are some other components that we can take advantage of that are really become environmentally aware components. So if we wanted to leverage things like the time of the day or different event-based actions, for example, we can provide discounts to users or students in this case during class times. So if a user is printing during a set time of the day, then we can provide a discount to that user. Now, if we look at some things like job ticketing and job submission, this is really where we're going to allow our users to send in print jobs, and then typically a production print environment would be manually producing these documents. And this isn't necessarily just related to print. So this is really where we want to track and manage that production print workflow. We're going to provide that centralized web page to accept print jobs from users. This can really facilitate a really great way of exchanging information in a secure manner. A key point to that job ticketing and the submission component would be to track and charge for offline finished product usage. So, there's a lot of great cloud systems that we can track for what's being done to our print devices. But what happens when we bring in some of these other devices that aren't that traditional paper print process? So things like 3D print and CNC capabilities are becoming more and more integrated and interoperable in some of the print production print rooms. So we may need a method to track those print jobs and facilitate a charging back to those users that are performing those tasks. Another key component is the billing integrations and payment gateways. Some different spaces that we do typically see these as being more useful and more of a requirement for these environments is in that higher education markets, some of the professional services markets, things like legal and architecture, or maybe some office spaces or shared office spaces where we need to bill back users for the usage that is being done in those environments. So to take a bit of a closer look from a higher education perspective, there's really 3 different methods of how we would integrate in with some of these different systems. Now, from a student bill back perspective, if you're in the higher education market, some of these names may sound familiar: Blackboard, Seaboard, Aleutian Banner. These are typically student accounting systems or student finance systems that we may want to integrate the print usage of those students and charge that student back through in an automated way back to their accounting system. So, these are just a very small set of some of the examples, some of the systems that we can interact with. So, very short list, but there are several options out there that you may be using currently and have that requirement. Another method is the student funding accounts or student funded accounts. And these may come in the way of utilizing services like PayPal or Nelnet or even coin operated printing. And not limited to coin, but, coin, bill, cash and credit cards. There are some different systems that we need to establish that connection for funding a print job before that print job actually gets generated. So think along the lines of a public library where we can fund accounts as an on-demand need and then print those documents out. Lastly is the self-managed system. So there may be needs of using something like a top-up card or a credit code or a voucher code for a student account or for a user account where they can fund that account and have a set amount of credit that they can utilize within that print system. So on-premise systems have some really great tools to manage these different types of integrations, especially in that higher education market. So if we look at some of the professional services, again, these are a very small set of some example applications or line of business applications that you might be using in your business today. Typically when we have an organization, I'll pick on that legal market for a little bit. One of the common requirements would be to build back the print usage or the copy usage that's being done and build that back to the client. Now that really would require that integration of the print system along with the charging capabilities of the system that particular firm might be using. So integrating with something like Time Matters or ProLaw, very common in the legal market, as well as when we want to track those different attorney fees and tracking those back to folks that have that requirement. Also, beyond that legal market, this really could be applicable to things like architecture or real estate, where we want to charge back those deliverables back to some type of entity. So again, Sage time slips or tabs 3 or some different applications that we see very commonly utilized for some of those integrations in the payment gateways. Now, finally, in that shared office space, and shared office space as really as an example, but this could apply just the same as to a real estate firm as well, that maybe we need to build back usage to our tenants. Maybe we need to control how much printing is being utilized. And in some cases, maybe we need some better integrations to manage the users. So some different applications that we've seen and integrated with are things like Cobot or Office R&D or Nexidus. These not only involve the chargeback and the automation of that chargeback to the users, but this could also involve creating and managing users as folks come in and out of a different organization. So there are some different integration tools that we can work with really at that user integration level as well. So let's take a look at some of the different markets that have some different capabilities or have some different requirements, I should say, around an output management system and where an on-premise application may fit better. So in that office space environment, some of the things that these folks may be looking to accomplish are things like mitigating the risk of that unattended confidential document that might be left at a printer. This is probably the first and foremost security point to secure that paper document to make sure that only the right people are releasing documents on the right devices. Track and monitor that print activity for compliance and regulation and being able to report on those different activities. Implementing user quotas or department budgets to manage printing expenses help prevent that unauthorized access to sensitive information. And that goes hand in hand when we want to classify information or classify documents with users. Automating that printer installation within a network firewall, and specifically really within that network firewall. You know, the on-premise system really has a great way of being able to integrate and work within the network that it's existing on. And when we need to automate and push out those printer objects to users and still maintain that control, that we're all within the secure mode of that organization, as well as the ability to print and track via mainframe and specialized hardware. So in a lot of office spaces, there may be some mainframe printing that exists somewhat outside of a standard user hitting file print. These may be some automated print methods, and there are some on-premise print systems that can do a great job of intercepting those prints or maybe tracking those prints in some different ways. Being those mainframe type devices and systems are generating those print flows within an organization, so an on-premise system would really be a great fit to interact and account for those different print processes that are in the organization now. So if we look at those professional services, and we can consider print for pay in this same type of organization, you know, print job submission and ticketing may be very important. Being able to have a robust reporting of what the print activity, and also to recover the cost on that print activity and maybe copy activity as well. Having the security with that print audit trail to ensure accurate billing and reconciliation insights. This is really a key point when we're charging folks for the print usage that they're doing, is to be able to not only accurately charge at the onset, but as well as to be able to provide the reconciliation of that billing if ever questioned. To integrate in with some of the back-end systems to automate that customer billing and that client matter information, and extracting that client information from the users that are submitting those print jobs. Hardware support to handle various pay systems and output manufacturers, and that's really relating to when we want to integrate systems like the coin operation systems and the print for pay on demand, as well as different output manufacturers where maybe we need to consider something like a wide format device, and how are we going to charge users for the usage on those particular platforms. So finally, in the education market, where some common tasks that are requested is for the ability to implement quotas or follow me printing, to control that printing, and most significantly save on printing budgets. You know, just as an industry statistic, there's about a 20% reduction of print when we implement something like a follow me print infrastructure to really cut down on that print cost and gain control over the print budgets. Leveraging staffed print centers for students to submit jobs to be printed and then charge back to those students or departments appropriately. We can really help to guide some of that student printing through print scripting. So if, for example, if a student has access to free printing, we don't necessarily want them to print out entire textbooks and really large volumes of print on some of those free printers, but maybe we need to guide those back over to that production print center. That's something that we can attain through print scripting. Maybe we need to integrate with student information systems to simplify that billing and the student use charging. Leverage some of those self-service pay stations to accept money or credit for credit to be able to make prints on those devices or copies. And finally, to help secure printing with user authentication and access control to adhere to data privacy regulations. It's very important that that we're executing our business in a secure manner from anybody that shouldn't be receiving the information that we're generating. So let's take a look at, from a professional services perspective, and some of the things that Toshiba can help out with. Now, we do have services tailored to really meet the needs of a wide variety of businesses. This may come in the way of managed services, of managing an entire implementation, as well as the ongoing use of that application. Providing the professional services that are really necessary to architect and build and deliver some of these specific solutions where we can really help out with some of the needs that we've reviewed over the last couple of minutes here. Now, while we are talking about a lot of on-premise today, still having that ability to offer some of the cloud services where, in some organizations, an on-premise system may not be necessary. We do have the capability to offer those cloud services when it's the right fit for a customer. And that being a key point is to have the professional services with the ability to help you navigate when you need a cloud output management system as opposed to an on-prem output management system. And then finally, some business process services that we can offer as it relates to optimizing your current environment or optimizing your current workflows. So we do offer several services that can help with navigating what that structure looks like now, and then how we can optimize that structure going ahead. Now, there are several teams that really come together to complete and offer a full implementation service. So we do offer that full service of consulting where we can really identify what your current requirements are. The implementation is obviously a key component here where our system engineers can really help to guide that implementation, implement that into your environment, and then fit all the needs and the requirements that you have for your system. At Toshiba, we have many years of experience within, obviously, not only printing devices, but the output management systems that go along with that. So I implore you to really leverage that knowledge that we can offer for your environments. Now, any implementation of size is a really difficult undertaking, but having the project management expertise and capabilities around those implementation services is really key to having that successful implementation. So along with that consulting process, implementing those systems, and then providing the project management to deliver that final product is really a full service offering that we can supply. And then finally, once these systems are implemented and they're on their way, it's important that we can support those on an ongoing basis. So we do have full support organizations that can provide that continuous guidance. We're recognized for our award-winning remote and on-site support, and that's not only for MFP hardware or print hardware, but on the output management systems as well. Now, I had mentioned that we do offer some services to help out to really identify what your current environment looks like now, and then offer some recommendations as to some areas that can really be adjusted or optimized, I should say. So one of these services is the business process optimization study, specifically around print, specifically around how documents are being generated, what's happening with those documents, where are they going, where are they, what's the end life or that total life cycle of a particular document, and really understanding what that document life cycle is from creation to destruction can really help to optimize a print infrastructure in that environment. In a lot of cases, going through an exercise like a business process optimization study allows not only to optimize the print, but also optimize those documents that maybe don't need to be printed. So there are some other tools and some solutions that we have in our tool chest that can really help out from that perspective as well. Now, if you're considering the move to cloud and maybe jumping your on-premise output management system that you currently are working with, and maybe considering something like moving that infrastructure out to the cloud. We also offer that cloud print optimization study where we can, again, take a look at what that print infrastructure looks like, how it's being utilized currently, and then how some of the cloud components can help in those organizations, and really put some good metrics around when a cloud print optimization study, when a cloud output management system should be implemented as opposed to on-premise. Offering print assessments is really, there's really no better tool than to understand what your print environment looks like than to know exactly what devices are getting that volume. That goes in hand really with the output management reporting, that we can marry that information and that data together to provide a full 360 view of what's going on in an organization as it relates to print. So in this, we're really offering that comprehensive approach from the cloud print enablement, where maybe you really just have a requirement to utilize the cloud to make print easier and enable your users to be able to print. We have applications that take that enablement and then add some management to that enablement piece as well. So some products like Elevate Sky Print Management is really a great cloud print management application or solution that helps not only enable that print, but we can also securely monitor the entire fleet and then maintain all of that from a remote position. And then there are some of those on-premise solutions that we have in the tool chest that maybe your environment really calls for that on-premise application to be implemented. And we have that full suite of services and solutions to be able to offer really wherever your needs are and wherever your print requirements are now. We can meet you where you need to be. So I'd like to open it up to some questions. Colin, do we have anything in the message pod?
Nothing right now. Feel free to participate though. Question pod should be on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you do ask any questions that we don't get to today, we'd be happy to reach out to you in a more one-on-one setting to get your questions answered. Give it a couple minutes here.
Thank you, Paul and Colin, for assisting in this endeavor here while people are maybe thinking of any questions and everything. This has been a journey that we've had over the past months, and this was definitely more of a technical piece, but I think this kind of delineates some of the items under the subject matter, and also leads to maybe some interest and curiosity. We're always here to help answer questions in the future too, and this webinar will be posted so people could see it out there. Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, but YouTube, it would be a good place to find this if anybody else wanted to look at this going forward.
All right, well, if we don't have any questions, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. I really appreciate the time to hopefully learn something about making a little more of an educated decision between a cloud and an on-premise system. The team here is here to support. Thank you to Darren and Colin for your help today in helping out with this presentation. Thank you all.